Serious. What are some creepy urban legends? I'm from a town called Lake Ronkonkoma, central Long Island. We have the Lady of the Lake. Basically, back hundreds of years ago, this Indian princess fell in love with one of the European settlers. Since their love was forbidden by her father, she would paddle in a canoe to the center of the lake and float notes out to her beloved on the other side of the lake. Eventually she couldn't take it anymore, sent a final note, and then committed self-ending. Every year for the last 200 years, at least one person has died mysteriously in the lake, mostly male. Some say it's the lady dragging in men looking for her lost lover. Bodies have been known to turn up in the Long Island Sound by Connecticut, despite Lake Ronkonkoma being a kettle hole in the middle of Long Island. Basically, a bridge constructed in the 11th century called the Devil's Bridge. Legend says that during construction, the devil would spend each night undoing the work done during the day. So of course they decided to have a deal with the devil, as you do in medieval France to build a bridge. He would let them build the bridge, but he would claim the first soul to cross the darn thing. They made a cat cross the bridge, the devil went mad, failed to destroy the bridge, and jumped off it into the water 60 feet below. To this day, the thing is said to be cursed since people sometimes use it for self-ending. So the people say that the devil is still claiming souls, and to each their versions of how he chooses his victims. Popular one is that one of your distant ancestor was one of the bridge builder that tricked the devil. More of a ghost story, but across the street from my local library, there's an old high school. It was closed years before I was even born. The story went that one day, a boy got detention, and the principal put him in the old, even at that time, bell tower which had been converted to a small storage room. The principal locked the door from the outside so the boy couldn't skip out, but forgot he was there when he left for the day. After hours of screaming and banging to be let out, the boy tried getting out through a window. It didn't go well. Supposedly you can still sometimes see the boy in the windows, and on quiet nights, you can hear muffled banging. The place got renovated and turned into an old folks' home about 8 years ago. They never touched that bell tower though. I live in Florida and there's an old sugar mill from the 1600s near me. At some point, the people on the plantation started a revolt with the help of the Seminole Indians and secured their freedom by ending many of the landowners. According to several people who were interviewed independently of each other, there is a ghostly Native American on horseback that still chases people off the property at the same time they attacked the colonists 400 years ago. There was a ghost story in my village that some of the parents liked to tell their kids, going on up until about 10 years ago. There was a train line that used to run between two towns in the early 1900s, and it runs right behind my village, separating one side of the village from fields. The train line is now a dirt track and nature walk with the train station converted into someone's house, but there was a story that I and some other kids were told back then, and I only asked about it recently for more context to learn where it came from. Apparently, there was a woman who had a child before getting married to the father. This being early 1900s, before the First World War. I was told a lot of people were still deeply religious, and during the ceremony, on her wedding day, someone stole the baby from wherever it was being kept and took it a ways down the train line and just left it there to die. When the woman discovered the baby had been stolen, she went running around looking for it until someone told her they had seen someone walking to the tracks with a newborn. There, she found her baby lifeless and she just started walking, still in her wedding dress, and never came back. No one ever knew what happened to her, but it was assumed she wandered off somewhere to end herself or find the person responsible. Now, it is rumored that if you go down that track in the dead of night and say, white lady, I ended your baby," she will appear in front of you and rip you in half because that's what happened to her kid. I have a mate who's worked with a lot of indigenous people all over Australia. Some of the old stories they have are beautiful, and some of them are dark as heck. One group of Aboriginal people in NSW have this great story about little 4-foot-high people who come out of tree trunks, and if you're not out of the bush by sunset, they tear your skin off. Charming. Further south, there's basically a Wendigo-style legend that they tell where this tall thin man will eat you from the inside and wear your skin. So if your friend goes missing and you later see him but he won't answer to his name, you have to run. That's not to mention the pointing of the bones, the Thin Man legends from QLD, where there are various standing rock formations all around Australia, even the indigenous people won't enter. If you get indigenous people who are superstitious enough they won't even drive through the Poliga at night, there's apparently too many legends connected with the scrub that they just figure it's best to wait for daylight. In my town growing up, there was a certain old road, long closed now, that went past a small old cemetery. It was said that if you drove on that road by yourself on a specific day at a specific time of night, an apparition of a motor accident victim that died there and was buried in that cemetery would sit in your passenger seat. My city has quite a few and I remember only one right now. I heard it while I was in school, around 5th or 6th grade. It's called the Evil Dead Curse. The legend is if you watch the entire Evil Dead movie alone after 10 p.m., you die. Specifically, you just drop dead from a heart attack or a brain aneurysm or something. This started when the movie first came out. It was being shown at all theaters in the city, and a few old people did die at late-night screenings of this movie. One movie theater decided to debunk this urban legend and offered an ambassador car with a full tank of gas, tax-free if one person sat and watched the entire Evil Dead movie alone in their theater, specifically at midnight. One dude who had just come to the city heard of the challenge, went and watched the movie. After the movie ended, he went to the restroom to take a piss and didn't come out for quite a while. The theater owner waiting there with the keys to the ambassador car got worried, went into the restroom, only to find the dude dead on the floor. No marks on him and the coroner's report stated heart attack as cause of death. No one even tried to watch Evil Dead alone after that. On the island of Okinawa, Japan, there was a house in which a man ended himself and his family. It was said that he was persecuting the rest of the inhabitants. It is reported that after this event, various terrible things were going on in the house. A sudden turn on of light or, for example, in the window you could see a woman who washes her hair in the sink. The scariest thing today is that this house was separated by a fence. And children 4 to 5 years old, who study not far in kindergarten, constantly throw toys into the fence. When asked why they do this, the guys said they want to play with the children on the other side. It is frightening to realize that almost all living children have seen the dead. This greatly frightened those who worked in the kindergarten. In my opinion, it's creepy. There's an old legend from WW2 that I've heard so many variations of, but here's the general gist of it. A group of soldiers had just finished setting up a minefield and were getting ready to lay down the markers, which would indicate the safe route through it so that friendlies wouldn't get blown up. Before they could do that, however, they get strafed by a bunch of enemy planes. Their lieutenant or commanding officer, I've heard the story told in many different ways, is among the dead. As they get to work on picking up the pieces, treating the wounded etc., they hear the rumble of a truck coming towards them and notice that the safe route hasn't been marked out yet. They realize that they will only be able to watch as the truck driver gets blown up by a mine. Suddenly, the truck slows down and starts following the correct safe route through the field without any markers indicating where it is. When the driver gets out, the soldiers ask him how the heck did you get through the minefield? The route wasn't even marked. Confused, the driver tells them, "Your lieutenant led me in." "You mean that lieutenant?" said one of the soldiers, pointing at the corpse in the medical tent. The driver suddenly goes pale and says, "Yeah, that was him." "What happened?" "He passed nearly an hour ago," the soldier replied. Confused and somewhat shaken, the driver weakly replied, "I have no idea then, maybe his ghost or something?" Before dropping off his supplies and asking to be led back out of the minefield again. The soldiers had a funny feeling that somehow, somewhere, the spirit of their dead officer was still watching over them. There is a local lake that when I was growing up, I heard this story that a woman was drowned there by her fiancé. On certain nights, she would come up out of the water, and if you happened to be parked near the lake, she would put her hand on your windshield. If she pulled her hand away and it left a handprint, it meant you were going to die too. Here in Italy, there is a legend in our high school that a guy ended himself by jumping over the window of his classroom. The fact here is that if you come to school early, I mean very early, you can see his ghost in the window of his classroom. Goatman's Bridge in Denton, Texas. The legend goes that years ago, there was a black man that lived under the bridge who had goats, basically just a small farm. I don't remember all the details, but it said he was hung from the bridge. At night, it's said that you can see a half man, half goat on the bridge. He allegedly haunts that bridge and the surrounding woods. I've actually been there with a group of friends in the middle of the night, roughly about 3 a.m. for the supposed devil's hour. Didn't see any goat man, but those woods were creepy. There's a sign on the other side of the bridge that used to have a bunch of satanic drawings on it. Probably just a bunch of edgy teens that made it. However, I did find out shortly after that most people claim you have to sit at one end of the bridge and invite them. We didn't do that, so who knows? Those woods were pretty creepy though. The light. The light is a common urban legend in my area. Unsurprisingly, I live literally by the area. The story goes that there was once a railroad track that ran through what is now a dirt road. One night, a man with an oil lamp was walking in the area, looking for his wife. Unfortunately, as he found his wife while on the tracks, he was struck by the train, leaving the wife a widow. It's said that the green light that appears every summer is the now widow, forever coming back to mourn his death. They say if you go there at night in the summer with your car and flash the headlights 3 times before cutting the engine, the eerie green light will appear. There have also been reports of the light messing with radios in the area. The light is strangely a form of swamp gas, as our town was founded and such. Unknown as to why you only see it in that area. Northern Indiana, USA. Here. There is a bridge known as Dogface Bridge near the town I grew up in. Legend says there was a couple who swerved to miss a dog and ended up decapitating the woman, and the man lived. The man woke from an unconscious state to find the dog's head on the woman's body. You can sometimes hear the faint howl of a dog, and those unfortunate enough to see the woman with the dog's head have some sort of PTSD from the situation. I have heard the dog howls, but it could have been coyotes or actual dogs in the woods near the bridge. It is run down and no longer in use. I've never seen the woman though.